Okay, we're going to talk about weddings. So if you think back, remember when Taylor Swift married Travis Kelce last month? The wedding was big, like Madison Square Garden big. But actually, the trend for celebrity nuptials is going the other way. The simple courthouse wedding is making a comeback. Sadaf Ahsan is a culture writer and editor and columnist at the Globe and Mail, and she wrote about this trend recently. And she joins me on the line. Hello.
Hi there. Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you. So what are some celebrities and examples of simple weddings recently?
So I'll give you two big examples. This was earlier this summer. So we have our Charlie XCX, a musician, another popular musician, Dua Lipa. They both had these really stunning courthouse weddings. They kept it small. They looked gorgeous. They still dressed up. They did all that, but they kept it to a nice, simple venue, low-key production, probably saved a ton of money, had a big party after. But this does seem to be a new pattern that's happening, not just for celebrities, but for regular people too.
And why do you think this is?
Well, you know what? I think it's a few things. I mean, listen, post-COVID, the cost of living has only risen, right? And I think people are looking for ways they can save a little money. But here's the other thing. It's a little more intimate, too. You know, you've got to be really intentional with every choice. I spoke to a few couples for the story who had the most beautiful experiences at their courthouse weddings. There was one couple, you know, they had their family friends take photos. They had an aunt officiate. They wore their grandparents' clothes. They wore local vintage picks from nearby stores. There's something about it that's more restrained, yes, but it doesn't give up on the beauty and the sentiment, I think.
Yeah. I mean, it also sounds like an aesthetic choice, I guess, like a statement almost, especially, you know, wearing your grandparents' clothes.
Yeah.
You know, it's almost like you're making a statement.
I think so. I think it ends up being a lot more intimate, right? Mm-hmm. You get to only have a few people with you. You can't fill up the space like you might at MSG, like Taylor Swift. But that means you bring the people who are closest to you probably, right? So maybe your parents, maybe a few close friends. And so every little touch becomes such a key, important, intentional choice. I think there's something really beautiful about that. Yeah. And, you know, if the most memorable thing is maybe the dress you wore or the shoes that you had, then it becomes really important where those were rooted from and what the origin was. So I think that's actually a really special part of it.
You mentioned the cost aspect, and you said, you know, certainly post-COVID and everything, but can we talk a little bit about the cost aspect of it? So I know in your research, you looked at how much sort of the average wedding, if there is such a thing, costs.
Yeah,
what did you find?
So let me hit you with the big number. So in Canada, the average wedding right now costs about $30K to $42K.
Wow.
So, you know, that's very substantial. For some people, that's their salary, right? Now, if you want to do a courthouse wedding, and I'm giving you average numbers, let's say you're in Montreal, you're in Toronto, you're looking at about $180 to $200 for a marriage license, and then maybe about $150 max just to reserve a civic wedding chamber, let's say, or a space at any nearby city hall. So it's much more affordable. The couples that I spoke to, they ended up spending maybe a few hundreds more or maybe $1,000 more just getting photography and outfits and maybe some flowers together. And then for a lot of them, with all that money that they saved, they would put that towards something like, say, a honeymoon or a dinner that they might treat their family to later in the week. So I think that's a pretty substantial save, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, it's kind of crazy when you balance the two out. What about the religious aspect, though? Is that something that Canadian couples are moving away from?
Well, I think it's interesting. I mean, you know, there's a lot of different cultures and places in the world where, you know, doing the legal part of it is just having like something really simple that looks like a courthouse wedding, and having a huge, massive wedding is not a key part of it. I think it's hard to say just now. We don't have the exact statistics for how much people are moving away from it, but there does seem to be something to separating the legal marriage from the celebration itself, right? So you can keep it really simple if you just want to get the paperwork done and then have a really big party or family event later. That does seem to be appealing to younger generations. So for instance, if you're on social media at all, if you're on TikTok, if you're on Pinterest, you might have seen this. There's actually almost 200% rise in Gen Z just looking up city hall elopement, or how can I make this simpler? What about a city hall marriage? What could that look like? So there is a part of that that's just, let's keep it simple. Let's not worry about all of the other things. Let's just get the paperwork done.
It's funny, and I don't know how to phrase this question, but I'm thinking, yeah, but is it always up to the ones that are getting married? Because it strikes me that if you're spending $42K on your wedding, your parents must be helping you out. If you're, in your 20s, well, I'm making big assumptions here. I don't know if that's true.
I would say so. I mean, listen, I'm South Asian, so I come from a very big wedding industrial complex where you're spending tons and tons. And I think it almost becomes a cultural expectation. Sometimes I joke with friends that, the wedding is really for the parents and maybe what they want, and especially if they're funding it, which I do think a lot of the time they are, especially for younger people now. It's so hard to afford something like that. You need that help. So I think one of the other beauties of having something smaller like this is you can probably fund it on your own, and that means you can probably make a lot of your own choices. But I did speak with one couple who felt like they did need to do a little extra just to keep their parents happy the day after. So sometimes that can mean, maybe you do a little destination thing, but you don't put all your investment into that. And maybe it's just a few people who come with you, or it is a big dinner at a fancy restaurant on the weekend, whatever that might look like. But yeah, I think this means that maybe Gen Z is looking to go their own way and be a little more independent.
So you see that trend continuing then?
I think so, and I think it's a beautiful thing. Why not? And listen, if it saves you money, that seems to be the key thing these days for everybody.
Yeah, and it's funny when you think about, you're talking about the sort of your cultural expectations, and when you think about parents, when parents get involved, there are always people that you have to invite, and those numbers just get bigger and bigger, and then your side of the family has 50, my side of the family needs to have 50, and and very rapidly it can get out of control.
It can be too much, and I think this is something that just makes it so much easier to tackle, right? And you don't even have to hire a wedding planner. You don't have to hire a photographer, even if you don't want to. You can keep it all within arm's length, which I think is one of the best parts about it, right? These days when you have a big wedding, there's so many moving parts, and it can run away from you. And gosh, this is just easier, so why not?
All right, well, listen, great talking to you. It was a lovely article. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sue.
Bye. That's Sadaf Ahsan. She's a culture writer and editor and columnist at the Globe and Mail, and her article was called "In Praise of the Courthouse Wedding." And actually, they're really nice pictures of Dua Lipa and Charlie XCX. I think they were in London, but it was very picturesque. Standing on the courthouse steps with the little bouquet. Back to simplicity.
iHeartRadio is throwing it back.
2010s, the decade.
To the days of huge hits and unforgettable anthems. A non-stop stream of the biggest and best.
Drake, Rihanna, Beyonce, Katy, Gaga, The Weeknd,
and more. All your decade-defining favorites, all in one place.
Hi, it's Katy Perry.
Hey, it's Bruno Mars.
This is Kesha.
Find 2010's The Decade on the free iHeartRadio app. Preset the station so it's always one tap away.